Good morning. I, like many of you, am settling into my home office, which right now consists of a card table. But hopefully, if I get the desk cleared off here, I'll have a more hospitable space for the weeks ahead. As we work from home, I know that we are practicing social distancing, and so many of us are spending more time at home and less time out and about. Perhaps for you that means more time for reading. It certainly does for me. And so if you get tired of reading about the coronavirus and want to occupy your mind with something different, I thought I would recommend a few books that you might find interesting if you want to keep up with your Christian education. These books are all related to church curriculums and that kind of thing. So here's some recommendations. I try not to go too overboard. I could have recommended so many books I just love, but here's some of my favorites. The first one is called Eat This Book. It's by Eugene Peterson, who was the translator of The Message, which is a popular biblical paraphrase. Peterson's Eat This Book is about a spiritual reading of Scripture, and it talks about how we can read Scripture prayerfully in such a way that it doesn't just occupy our sort of cognitive interests, but such that we really take it into ourselves and digest it so that Scripture becomes a part of not only our minds, but also our hearts. Another book I recommend is The Luminous Dusk by Dale Allison. He was one of my seminary professors. This is a book about finding God in the deep, still places, and it's about recovering a sense of wonder in our everyday lives, which can often get overlooked in the busyness and craziness that we often live our lives with. So this is a wonderful read about sort of pursuing that still small voice of God and recovering a sense of wonder in our lives. It's great for kind of the spiritually minded reader. This book's called A Grace Disguised by Jerry Sitzer. It's a book about moving through loss. The subtitle is How the Soul Grows Through Loss. But it's great for folks who are in the midst of a challenging time. If grief and mourning characterize your days right now, I highly recommend this book. It's very thoughtful, beautifully written. I spilled coffee all over mine. I can still remember that fateful day many years ago when I dumped a full mocha all over myself in a Starbucks, and this book was a bystander, and it became a victim, but it's still one of my favorite books. I think it's very profound and maybe meaningful to anyone struggling with a difficult time right now. This book is called Unclean. It's great for perhaps the socially minded reader. It talks about various cleanliness codes that humans have upheld, both in biblical times and also today, and how we can overcome those things that separate us. It talks about the human experience of disgust, where that comes from, and how it sometimes separates us, but ultimately how we can overcome those notions of uncleanliness and thus draw closer with one another. So this book is called Unclean by Richard Beck. And finally, if you're looking for something sort of theological or scholastic, I recommend Life Together by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. This little book is a great access point to Bonhoeffer if you've never read him. I think this is my favorite book. And this is the old version. They recently came out with an updated version, a nicer translation by Fortress Press, Life Together. You can get the reader's edition, which is nice and thin. The heavily annotated version is a lot thicker and more expensive, but it's a great read. You might be wondering why read about life together during this time apart, but you may be spending a lot more time with your family in your house, so there are elements to it that may be applicable to you. Or if you're spending a lot more time alone these days, there is a big chapter in that book called Life Alone, and talks about the role of solitude and a kind of rule of life for our time alone, as well as our time together. So it's a great read for anybody interested in Bonhoeffer, who, of course, is not only a wonderful theologian, but famous for his resistance to Nazism in Germany. So I hope those recommendations might spark an interest for you, but at any rate, know that I'll miss seeing you around. I look forward to the time when we can regather at the church. But in the meantime, blessings to you on your reading, and stay safe. Grace and peace. We'll talk to you later. Bye.